Welcome to Pharmacy View, Technology and Pharmacy Business podcast series, where we provide regular interviews with pharmacists and key industry people within the Australian pharmacy and associated industry. In each podcast, we look to discuss aspects of pharmacy operation and how technology is improving or interacting with each guest's current role or pharmacy-related business. I'm your host, Scott Carpenter, and today's guest is sponsored by Shopfront Solutions, leading the way in digital marketing and communications, providing a cloud-based platform for pharmacies to manage all of their digital messaging and print-based collateral. For more information on the Shopfront Solutions digital platform, simply go to the website at shopfrontsolutions.com.au. I'm talking today with Tracee Blythe, advisor and educator to the health, wellness and fitness industry. Welcome, Tracee.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It was great to actually, reach out and interact because you and I, as it turns out, have interacted a couple of times at different pharmacy industry events. While we may not know each other extremely well, it's certainly that we've crossed paths many, many times. But for anyone that is listening today that may not know, who is Tracee Blythe?
Yes, thanks, Scott. So I am a naturopath. I qualified back, seems like the dark ages now, pre a lot of things, back 17 years ago. And in that time have worked across as a naturopath in many different areas. So you're starting from health food store into clinic. I spent quite some time in pharmacy before moving to work for one of the leading supplement brands, or what is now one of the leading supplement brands in pharmacy. But back when I started, it was a small niche brand, and I'm based here in Perth, and I was over here setting up the brand to be launched into and have success in pharmacy. And that's where I suppose from both working in pharmacy, I've got a great perspective when it comes to working alongside pharmacists as the naturopath and helping patients and learning how to talk to patients. We might know as healthcare practitioners how to understand what a drug does, how to understand how it's going to help the patient, but explaining that to patients. That I honed my skills in pharmacy on that, but also then used them with educating pharmacists on some of these things that were new and novel to them. How can I recommend this with that? What do you mean? This nutrient's going to help that condition. How do I explain that to a patient? I know that talking about some things like probiotics and their benefits for anything other than the gut was a bit of a revelation for pharmacists many years ago. And so I spent many years working for that company. More recently, though, I have started my own business. And what that's born out of, it's been around 12 months now. I think that it will be in a couple of days. It's 12-month birthday. So Tracee Blythe Consulting will turn 1. What the purpose and the vision of me setting up my own education and consulting business for pharmacy is to offer an independent perspective. Whilst when working, representing a supplement brand and educating, that is invaluable as a resource and has absolutely a place. But as we know as healthcare providers, that we also want to learn about how we can help from an independent perspective, where perhaps not this exact product is the best one. Maybe there's a few different ones and they all have their pluses and minuses. So I've developed a course and a program for pharmacists to invest in their time and their energy so that they can, with my goal is that more people in the community can access really good quality advice around complementary medicine that is holistic. So that goes alongside their drugs, that the pharmacist is confident in what they recommend. With that big end goal that we all get better health.
For sure. And I think you raised a really good point there in terms of, the solution that people are thinking about may not be the right solution. And I guess I've been out of the corporate game now for about 5 years and in part time running my own consulting business. And occasionally when I get in contact or inquiries, the first thing I'll say to someone is that, look, I'm happy to have a first meeting. It's free, a general chat, but be prepared for that. If I don't think I'm the right person to help you, then I will more than likely actually refer you on to someone else that I think might be better. And it probably happens in about 4 of the 5 cases. And yes, there's probably consultants out there saying, yeah, how could you give away that business? Well, to me, the value and credibility in the product or the service is actually in the integrity of it as well. And I think you've raised a really good point there, and that is that, there'll be a medication for a particular ailment, but it doesn't necessarily mean that for that particular person it's the right way to go. And I think that's where your expertise comes in, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also think when it comes to consulting, when it comes to any service, because I'm also a naturopath back in clinic and loving that. And what's changed in the almost 15 years since I've done that, probably actually maybe 14, 15 years, is that naturopaths have recognized that they have a niche. Doesn't mean that they're specialists, it's actually two different things, but that they have a niche in what they are very good at helping. And when you stick within that niche, then you become an expert in providing that support. I take that same learning to what I offer as a consultant. I had a broad level of experience, nowhere near what yours would be, Scott, but it's certainly quite broad. But what I offer is quite narrow in that it's helping a very specific niche need that I think is useful for lots of pharmacists.
Perspective, yeah. And on that note, I guess in our pre-discussions, you raised a really good point that obviously the last 18 months is, I'm going to use a word that we haven't heard at least for this week, an unprecedented time. But there has definitely been increased pressure on pharmacists and pharmacy teams to almost become everything to everyone. And I think, every pharmacist that I've known or interact with certainly, would be very happy that they try and do that to the best of their abilities, and their team would do the same thing. But really, it's just getting, I'm not sure whether tougher is the word, but more demanding is probably the word on pharmacists these days, isn't it?
Oh gosh, the demands of what is required of a pharmacist, when we talk about unprecedented times and we talk about the last 18 months, 2 years odd now, that it's certainly been a challenge for so many. But the challenges, I'm sure there's so many out there that are listening now that are thinking, gosh, it wasn't an easy ride 2 years ago, though. It has been mounting and growing. I saw a great infographic just recently that showed that in 1972, the number of pharmacies were just under 6,000, between 5.5 and 6,000, and that Australia's population was half what it is today. And that now in 2021, so 50 years later, that the number of pharmacies has actually stayed within 100, the same number, but our population has doubled. We know that chronic health conditions have also grown in that time, and that for over the last 50 years, what is required of a pharmacist, what they're required to deliver to their community, what the community expects from them. Walking into a pharmacy as a Joe Blow consumer, expecting your pharmacy. I mean, the statistics come out every single year, and the pharmacists are always in the top 5, if not, fighting the nurses for number 1 as the most trusted profession in our country. But we expect our pharmacists to be the experts. We expect them to know, and that pressure only magnified in the last 18 months. I mean, the addition over the last 12 months of the rollout of implementing and delivering vaccines in a very changeable environment, it just continues to grow. And that's with offering services to help simplify that process for the pharmacist is what I suppose drives the opportunity for pharmacists to learn how to simplify that. You don't need to go read 300 references to understand what's going on for that patient. If you've got it that nice and there and neat all on one slide, that you can go, right, I know what's going on for this patient, and I know how to help them. To give those shortcuts, I think is an invaluable service and offer.
No, that's great. And certainly, again, every pharmacy team that I know of or interacted with in the last 18 months have certainly been through a challenging time, but they've risen to the occasion as they always do, and have come out smelling of roses, which they deserve very much so. And it's interesting when I 100%. Consistently follow media reports and social media activity around the pharmacy industry, that there's this continual debate between the different health institutions within Australia as to who should be doing what. At the end of the day, during this last 18 months, you could contact and go to your pharmacy as easy as you've ever been able to. It's just that they were potentially a little bit more stressed during that time. But, in terms of being the core of a community hub, they continue to play this great role, which is where, again, that you interact in. So let's move on.
So
Sorry. No, you go.
I was just going to say, I was just going to acknowledge that it's the unique healthcare position in Australia, that where you can walk into any pharmacy that's open and you'll be guaranteed that there is a qualified healthcare practitioner to help you for free.
Yep.
That does not exist anywhere else. I mean, there's a lot of emergency departments that if it's not an emergency, they'll turn you away. You can get quality healthcare advice in a pharmacy and continue, as you said, Scott, continue to throughout the pandemic, when a lot of ability to speak to doctors and specialists became only by telehealth and online, which for so many consumers was a challenge. Whereas you could still walk into your pharmacy, might be behind perspex, everyone might be PPE'd up, but you could still talk to someone. Such an important thing that we have here in Australia, and they do such an integral role in our health.
No, for sure. So, again, one of the other points we discussed, I guess, in our pre-discussions was the opportunity for pharmacists to gain easily or have access to quality information and independent information and education. Talk to us a bit about that side of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so look, it's something that from having studied pre-internet, being one of those relics, to now, there is, it's gone are the days of having to go to the library and pull books out to access the literal physical journals to get to journal articles. Nowadays, it's at our fingertips and we can Google, but that can be more overwhelming than less sometimes. If you were to put in a PubMed search for any nutrient and any condition, or any nutrient, any drug, I think there'd be a challenge to find no hits on those. There is, and more often than not, it's thousands and thousands of hits. So how do you cut the wheat from the chaff? We know that, you don't become a pharmacist by Googling about drugs, that you go and you study and you have you not more than just study. It's a whole lot of education. It's the same for a nutritionist or a naturopath degree. Those qualifications take some time. So when it comes back to that, patient walking in the door and asking, what's the best curcumin that I can take? Or what can you give me for my inflammation? I've heard about turmeric. That short of another degree, which I know that there are some incredible pharmacists, nutritionists and pharmacist naturopaths out there that have taken that time to do that learning, and all hats off to them. What a wonderful set of skills for their patients. But for most, that's beyond them. So bringing down those hundreds or thousands of hits on the Google or PubMed, and narrowing it down to that focus of this for this reason, at this dose, for how long, and that summarized version, so that you can invest a far less amount of time and understand the why and the how and the what that's going on for the patient, but be able to then explain that, because that's the most important part, I think, to be able to explain to the patient, why am I recommending you, a probiotic for your mental health, being able to explain that and get those great outcomes for the patient. So that's what I think, that getting that information is, you're literally either at the behest of somebody who's selling you their product, and they absolutely will give you great advice. And like I said, they have an absolutely valuable place. I did that as a job for so long, but that or a degree. And when they're your two choices, and you just want the information, you just want to help your patient. You just want to be able to have the answers to go, right, this is what you need for that, next.
Yeah, and look, I think what you've raised through there is a really interesting point too, because you're right. I'm a lot older than you, so don't see yourself too short at this stage. In terms of, I'm probably more the archaic relic than anyone. But I go back, and I was only thinking about this the other day, is that the wonders of technology means that you've got access to much more information than you've ever had before. But you've then got to determine that the information is the right information for you. If I go back, to my younger days, if I was doing a school project, you would be accessing a textbook, or you would be accessing a reference manual or something like that, which is really just one person's or one association's view of that subject. And I guess there's the dichotomy, because we know today that there's so many great minds out there with so much great information that have solved it. We've got access now because of technology to health information from across the globe that we wouldn't necessarily have had before. And I guess the challenge there being as a pharmacist is that your intuition is always going to be your greatest guide, I would imagine, that says in this particular case that my client or my customer or my patients is telling me what they think they want to hear or what they think I want to hear. But in reality, I've got to determine what's best for them. And that's where your specialisation comes in, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. It is. It's something I'm just watching a TV show at the moment. I'm not. I know it's advertised heavily called Dope Sick, and it's about the rise and rise of OxyContin in the 90s, and then its obvious downfall in the early 2000s and the aftermath of that. And one of the things I found, which the whole sorry saga is awful. But one of the things was the talk of the reps going in, and this is not, I'm not relating this to the Australian market and absolutely not to the nutritional industry either, but it's just the access to information that the rep would go to talk to the doctor and say 99% of the time this drug is not addictive, and the doctor would say that's not true, and they would pull out a paper, which it turns out was highly flawed. Wasn't a paper at all. It was literally just an observation from a researcher. It was not a paper, but it was written as though it was by people who had lots of money. And that paper was written as though it was absolute fact. And where could the doctor could these days it'd be like, right, over to Google, over to PubMed, literally get on a chat forum if they're, go and have a look on the groups just to see what everyone else is saying. But they didn't have that. Their source of information was that one person who said it's not addictive, and here's a huge bunch of free samples to go and give it a try. That kind of thing is it's interesting to see, like, that's how that could happen back in the day, back only in the 90s, back in the day, that these days we can access source so much easier, but with that global access to source, because we can access translated research really easily. It's sometimes difficult to tell that something has been translated. They do such a good job that it's then an overwhelm. It's go from no information to too much information. And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, and look, again, in the position that I'm in these days, I get to kind of, I guess, do a lot of research and scan a lot of information from the internet because, again, to a point, from a technology point of view, that's my background. I've been really buoyed by reading articles or being aware that in the last 18 months, the chief health officers in each of the states of Australia are interacting very often with each other. But more importantly, I did go and read one of the books on the background of COVID and where it's all come from. And for a long, long time, there's actually been, I think it was a WhatsApp group or something like that, that a lot of these epidemiologists have actually been talking about. So many people were aware of potentially what was coming because of the technology platforms before the government officials, because, a specialist in a particular country said, hey, I've just had this happen to me, or I've just had this client with, has anyone else experienced this? So again, it's this, the advent of the technology has allowed greater access to information, a lot more expertise and views on it, which ultimately gets us to where we want to go. But it's up to each of us then to determine what's right, for either ourselves or our clients from that perspective. So, Tracee, I guess in the last 18 months, but again, being positioned in West Australia, which is a great place. It's one of my favourite places too, by the way. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of saying it. It often comes up in some of my podcasts as the role that West Australia plays in it has in the Australian economy. But let's talk then about the technology platforms that you use, because like we're talking today on a digital basis, how do you now interact with your clients nationally and potentially internationally?
Yeah, look, I think that's something that is a absolute blessing to the work from home orders. Was my first interaction with something was like this was the MS Teams platform with the company I was working with. When everybody got sent home, and everybody getting their head around and navigating that in the first few weeks, it was that itchy feel of something new and something different, and I'm not sure. And I'm used to being out and about with my customers every single day, and now I'm stuck here behind a screen. What impact can I have? How can I impart knowledge? How can I share information? But what has really opened up for me, and I think for lots of people, is that there is a lot of technology out there that is very user friendly, that we can, and it's been shown time and time again. I'm sure those people with parents, those people that are parents that had children at home, and some of those really long lockdowns, there is technology there that can help us. When I started this business 12 months ago, one of the things, one of the biggest challenges for me was to choose the platform on which to host the course that I'm doing. And I know so I've got notebooks everywhere. I'm a notebook, I'm a writer of notes. And I was getting overwhelmed with Googling of the different options. And I know I wrote a full A4 page of all the different teaching platforms that there are. What I came down to was what was there were so many with so many different bells and whistles, and potentially in the future, I've got a few pegged that I really like the look of. One is called Podia, and another one is called Teachable. I highly recommended another teaching platform called Kajabi. But what I decided to offer to my customers and for me to use was simplicity. I wanted a simple platform that was simple to log into, that you could stay logged in. I wanted features like being able to put me on double speed. I know I can talk really fast, but I know that lots of pharmacists have a really short attention span. And I wanted it to be able to access it. Another thing that I looked for that was important to me was access via mobile, iPads as well, but mobile access was the things that I wanted. I know that my customers are often sitting out the back on break room in their break room having a cuppa or some lunch, and that might be where they can get 10 minutes of learning in. To have to be able to log into a desktop to be able to access a course or access their information just wasn't going to work. So I chose a platform called Member Vault, and I find it so simple. Like I said, there are some bells and whistles that are missing from it. More to do with the back end for me, that I do some things manually that I know can be automated. But for the, one thing I learned a long time ago was that it isn't about me. It isn't about, and that's a business to say that. It's about my customer. Um, some manual things at the back end. If I can have those streamlined with a new platform, and it's just as easy for the consumer, for my customer, great. We'll make that change. But at the moment, having access access on your phone, being able to stay logged in, being able to double the speed, those sorts of things are what my feedback that I sought. That's what my customers wanted. So that's why I chose it.
Absolutely. No, look, that's great. And I guess other platforms like Zoom, etc., you must be using as well.
Look, I have memberships coming out my ears for different organisations. I have Vimeo to store. So if you're looking to do things, I use Zoom, and what I've found is it's worth investing in. I found this myself through the trial and error that you do with using Zoom. That I actually pay for Zoom Webinar,
Yep.
and Zoom Webinar just gives a few extra features than Zoom Meeting. Technically, Zoom Meeting would work for what I do, but those extra features make it easier. Again, it's about ease of use because I record the course materials live. Course members have the opportunity to join me live if they'd like and ask questions. And the webinar gives, for the one-woman show that I am, gives the opportunity for those questions to be in a separate area and to not distract.
Yep.
But then I upload that webinar. That's once it's recorded. I actually then put it into QuickTime for trimming and cutting and things, which is that's part of my Mac. But then it goes up onto Vimeo. Vimeo is where you can store where you can put passwords on and off. You can store them in areas where different some of my clients that are not to do with the course, they access materials that I create for them on that platform. So Vimeo is a really important other platform that I use. I know a lot of people will just put them on YouTube, but I think when it comes to healthcare professional advice, that we need to be putting some barriers and some boundaries around that information and education.
For sure.
Yeah, so they're the main three that I'm using would be Zoom, Vimeo, and Member Vault currently for the business.
No, look, that's great. Tracee, we're coming to the end of our time, and I keep telling all my guests that you'd be surprised how quickly this time goes, and I do, for our listeners, try to keep it all under 30 minutes because I think that's a good listening time. But before we go, is there any other points that are on your list that you wanted to share with our listeners today?
Look, I think that I think we've covered a lot here today. I suppose it's just for the listeners out there today to understand, if it's the take-home message, is to understand that when it comes to using the specialization is in what I do. You talk about that niching right down. It's not just complementary medicine education and things. It's actually quite niched to what is safe and what is effective based on the evidence when it comes to complementary medicine alongside prescription drugs. So this isn't about patients who are not on prescription medications and whether we can help our patients before, say they go onto a blood pressure medication. Oh, I've got to get, do all these things beforehand. We know the reality. We are a very medicated society in Australia. The number of scripts that people are taking, to be able to, the goal and the purpose is to be able to help Mrs. Jones, who's come in with her little handful of scripts, knowing what is safe to help her, knowing what is going to be effective, and knowing that you've got the backing of evidence. If to go, why am I taking that? Why do you want to give me magnesium for my blood pressure? Well, Mrs. Jones, the evidence shows that this, and this are the reasons, and the evidence also shows it's safe for that, and that. That giving that information to put in the pocket of a pharmacist, so they can pull that out when they need it. They can help their patients and they can help their business. So that's I suppose the take-home message. There is lots that we can do to help our patients improve their health.
Thanks, Tracee. Look, that's been great to chat today. And for our listeners, I'll make sure that the links to your LinkedIn page and to your website are all available through them in the show notes. So thanks again for your time today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening today. Pharmacy View is a technology-focused podcast provided by Melbourne-based business Arian Technologies and Shopfront Solutions. Over the podcast series, our guests include pharmacists, retail managers, wholesalers, suppliers, and industry technology partners. If you would like further information on our podcast series or to participate in one of our episodes, feel free to send me a message or touch base through the Pharmacy View website, pharmacyview.com.au.